College, Daman, VNSG University. Prior to this, he has served in the UT of Pondicherry and University of Delhi as assistant professor in botany. His main area of teaching and research interest lies on bioinformatics, molecular ecology, molecular biology. He completed his PhD from University of Delhi on understanding the microbial succession using metagenomic approach in a barren mine outside undergoing ecological restoration. He has several publications which include research paper, review articles, book chapter, and he has also edited many books. He is recipient of Young Scientist International Travel Grant in 2015 by DST ACRB, Ministry of Science and Technology, New Delhi, for presenting his PhD work at Prague, Czech Republic. He has been teaching bioinformatics for 9 years and has supervised many master theses in which the students have used tools and techniques of bioinformatics to come up with their research work. With this brief introduction, without taking much time for much awaited talk, now I would like to invite Dr. Prashant Pant to deliver the talk. Dr. Prashant Pant, this session is up to 4:30. So this session is up to 5. So I would like to request you can finish your talk till 4:30. I request all participants to mute yourself during the lecture. Over to you, Dr. Prashant.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope I am loud and clear and audible to everyone. Sir, Ansari sir, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are audible, sir.
Okay, so I am sharing my PPT. Thank you so much for inviting me, and let's have the presentation first, so that in time we can finish, and then I'll discuss further. So, do I have the permission to share my PowerPoint presentation?
Please.
Okay, so I think my PowerPoint presentation is on.
Yes,
I hope
yes, Dr. Pant.
all of you can see the presentation.
Yes, Dr. Pant.
Okay, okay. Just one more question. Can you see the red laser pointer also? I'm trying to move it. So is that pointer is also moving according to my movement?
Yes, Dr. Pant.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes when network is slow, the pointer might move a little bit slower, but that's okay. I'll go as slow as possible. So first of all, thank you so much for inviting me for this amazing workshop. I was going through the schedule and I saw that almost entire, the basic tools and techniques that are required to complete course in bioinformatics for beginners UG or PG level is actually included in this particular workshop, and that is really good. So that ways that workshop is actually going to be very useful And I have seen that in the past also, because of these workshops, such workshops, students are actually motivated to take up bioinformatics as their career option, and go for a postgraduate degree in bioinformatics. Sometimes they take up PhDs and postdocs also, and that is actually very useful, because in these days, in current times, you have to diversify, you have to expand your horizon. Well, that said, good morning, good afternoon, friends. I'm going to take up two topics today. One is BLAST and the other is ORF Finder. So I'm going to start with the first one, that is BLAST. Okay, the name is a bit intriguing, because the name itself is very exciting. No, so to begin with, BLAST is a short form acronym for Basic Local Alignment Search Tool. So basically it is a tool, okay? And to be more specific, it is like very much like a Google search engine. It is also a search tool, okay? So it is a search tool which uses the concept of local alignment, okay, to help us search something. And what exactly we are doing with BLAST, how we are deploying BLAST in our work, that we are going to study. So the delimitation of today's topic is basically BLAST based nucleic acid and protein sequence identification and characterization, that we are going to limit ourselves, because BLAST in itself in these times has diversified a lot. And to begin with, we are going to see how we can identify, characterize, annotate the DNA or RNA sequences or protein sequences, and try to know what they are basically, what they are doing, what is their possible role, or to whom they belong to. Okay, moving on. What is the basic purpose of BLAST? Okay, as a UG student, as a PG student, you might want to know what exactly are we trying to achieve? What is the basic purpose? Why and when do we use BLAST? So essentially speaking, there are three core areas where we deploy BLAST. The first area is when we are comparing a query. Now, what is a query? In this case, your sequence or the user's sequence or any unknown DNA protein molecule which you are using as the one against which you want to find similar or homologous sequences is called query. So whatever is your sequence or whatever is user sequence, we are calling it as query. So comparing the query sequence, which can be DNA sequence, it can be RNA sequence, it can be protein sequence. When we are comparing that with the subject sequence, okay, subject sequence also known as a reference sequence, sometimes it is called a relative sequence. These are all synonyms, subject, relative, or reference. So when we are comparing a query with a reference sequence or a known sequence or a subject sequence which is available with you or it is available in the database, when we are comparing these two and we are looking for a pairwise match, what is the percentage identity? How much they are similar? How much they are not similar? Okay, what is the situation when we speak of alignment? Okay, yesterday you had a session on sequence alignment. So when I want to know what is the status of alignment between a query sequence and a subject sequence, when I'm trying to compare that, that is the first thing that we achieve when we do BLAST. Secondly, for identification of an unknown sequence, that means you have a sequence with you. Okay, it can be a DNA, RNA, or protein sequence. You have the sequence. Okay, you might have done some sequencing work in summer internship, or you might have a sequence and you don't know who is this. Okay, so when you want to know who is this, okay, it can be DNA, RNA, or protein. So to identify that unknown sequence and you want to label that particular sequence, you want to identify certain regions, motifs, domains, conserved sites in that particular sequence. When you want to do that, we use BLAST based homology searching. Okay, and Thirdly, when you want to associate possible functions, that means, what is it might be doing. Okay, remember one thing, BLAST is a computer-based statistical approach of finding who is this. So we can never say X is this. We say most probably or putatively X is doing this. So when you want to associate putative or possible functions of a DNA coding region or a protein sequence or any nucleic acid sequence, when you want to say, is it coding or non-coding? Is it a gene or not? If it is a gene, then which gene? Where it is might be functioning? Is it a plastid gene or a nuclear gene? Is it rRNA, or is it some housekeeping gene, or is it some temporal or tissue specific gene? So when you want to associate possible function of any DNA sequence, whether it is coding or not, or a protein sequence, okay, you do BLAST. You basically go for BLAST because that is the most rapid, most efficient, and most accurate method to know what it might be doing. Okay, so these are the three basic things that we try to achieve using BLAST. Okay, so now the question that comes to our mind is, I am assuming that you must have heard about BLAST. So, or if you have not heard about BLAST, then by now you have this kind of thing in your mind. Okay, there is a query, there is a subject. So you are basically using BLAST as a matchmaker. Okay, you are using BLAST as a matchmaker. There is a query, there is a subject. Okay, query is unknown, or even if it is known, I want to see how much percentage identity it is having with a reference or subject sequence. So when you want to when you want to know how much identity this query and subject are having in between them, you are using BLAST. That much I think you have got now. But exactly on what basis? How do you do that? How does BLAST do all those things? And what is the exact criteria on which it works? So now I will take you to a small, give me a second. I'll take you to a small story. It's a small story. Okay. In my entire teaching of 8 to 9 years now, I have taught, whenever I have taught BLAST, I have told this story. So it is my duty to tell you this story. So it's a small story, and I want you to basically remember this story, this entire session, so that you can relate things. So the story goes like this. It's a fine winter morning. It's very foggy. It's dense fog is there, and there are some morning walkers, early risers, who are actually going into a park, and they're doing some exercise. They're just roaming around and they're having good time in the morning. But remember, it's a winter morning, very foggy. You can't really see much. And what happens? A crime has occurred. A crime has occurred in the center of the park. 3-4 morning walkers are there. They have seen the crime. The problem is, because the fog was so dense, you have not seen the criminal. Okay, what you have got is just some idea. You have got some features you have noticed, but you have not seen the criminal. Sometimes I mean the situation is so bad that you don't even know it was a man or a woman. Okay, but you have noticed some features. Okay, fine. Criminal has managed to escape after doing the crime. Yes, he or she has gone. Now somebody calls 100 or 112, and police comes and investigation starts. Okay, the police officer or the investigating officer, he or she starts asking questions like, okay, what did you saw? What was the time? So what is happening is that the morning walkers, they are telling in tidbits. They're telling things in bursts. They're telling what they could see, but nobody actually has seen the criminal. They don't know whether it was a man or woman. And what they are telling it is like this. Somebody is saying that person was wearing a hat. Somebody else was saying the person was tall, approximately 5 to 6 feet. Somebody else is saying the person was having a long overcoat. Okay, they don't remember, or they couldn't identify whether the overcoat was blue or black. They're saying it was a long overcoat. Somebody is saying the person was having a long boot. Somebody might be saying the person was having a slight limp in one of the leg. Somebody might say the person, one of the hand was absent, or one arm was not there, and the thing will go on. I mean, they will give clues. They are giving you clues, but you don't know man or woman. You don't know approximate age. You don't know what the kind of person it was, and you have only got some information which is purely based on what they could gather in those few minutes or seconds when they could actually see the criminal. Okay, so now what happens next? Okay, you have a picture in front of you. It's a very common picture these days when you see any crime patrol or any similar show. You will see police inspectors or those detectives have this board where they try to make a map. They try to make a map of, okay, who are the persons involved, who is the victim, where they have been, where their mobile phones have been, what is the weapon used, and so on. So they try to map things. Okay, so what happens next? Now what will happen next? So the investigating officer has some information or clue that is told to them. That investigating officer, as a standard operating procedure, what he or she will do is, from the crime databases as well as from the possible suspects who match closely to the given clue, a hit list will be prepared, including those who are circumstantial evidences. Okay, so the standard procedure is that you will go into the database, the crime database, to see if you can find a possible match with a possible suspect who has a criminal history, who might match with what is being told, something like tallness, or a particular habit of wearing a coat or boot, or having a habit of wearing a particular hat. So you got the idea. The crime database, I mean the investigating officer will go into the database and will try to pick up suspects, okay, possible suspects, and he will come up with a hit list. Also, that officer will prepare those suspects also who are not in the database, but they are circumstantial evidences. Circumstantial evidences means they are not having a criminal history, but they were found in and around the crime scene, and they are also having similar features as told by the morning walkers. So whatever morning walkers have told, similar kind of profile was seen in a particular in a random person moving or was present in and around this crime scene. So now this is a small story which tells you crime has happened. Nobody knows the criminal. They have some idea who was that person like, okay, and now we are jumping into database as well as whosoever was present during that particular crime scene in and around that area, and we are trying to come up with a hit list. Okay, please note, we are coming up with a hit list. We are not coming up with the final person who actually has done the crime. We might catch him or her, but I am not going to be that much enthusiastic saying that we'll end up catching the criminal. It is possible that criminal will not be caught, okay, and you will end up having some suspects. But the idea is that you will come up with a hit list of possible suspects, among which there is a great probability that one of them will be the actual one who has done the crime. But my my expectation, or you can say my expectation is that I am going to come up with possible suspects who are matching and who are circumstantial evidences who might have done the crime. Okay, now remember this particular analogy of local alignment in BLAST, and now we are going back to our BLAST. Okay, so now I am going deep into BLAST, and you remember this story. I will try to recollect the story at certain points, showing you the similarities between BLAST and this particular murder crime investigation theory. Okay, so now what has happened is, I just asked a question, how does BLAST work? I told you query and subject, matchmaker, BLAST is like a matchmaker, and I was asking on what basis. Then I went into this story. Now I am back to my question, on what basis. So now from the story that we have, just gone through, on that story, I can now say something like, on the basis of multiple small short local alignments. Now please pay attention. Multiple small short local alignment are nothing but, the person was having a boot, the person was having a coat, the person was wearing a hat, the person had a pink, goggle or something like that. These small clues, if you remember this story, these small clues, they are actually forming now basis of multiple small short local alignments that are created as part of sequence alignment process. So please recollect your sequence alignment session yesterday. On the basis of multiple small short local alignments that are created as part of sequence alignment process between a given query, the user sequence, and several hundred to thousands of reference sequences. Okay, so if I have to recollect my murder story, here these 100 to thousands are basically possible suspects having a criminal record. Just like that, here you have several hundred to thousands of reference sequences which are present in a sequence database, okay, which are now going to be aligned with my sequence, which I am calling query, based on those small short local alignments which are, due to their conserved nature or due to their repetitive nature, are going to help me at least round up a list of suspect. I told you my motive of doing this exercise in this previous slide is not to come up with the actual criminal. Okay, if I am very lucky, I'll get it, but otherwise I'm not hoping that. What I am hoping is a suspect list. Exactly here, I am going to round up from thousands and thousands and lakhs of reference sequences. I'm going to round up certain sequences which are, due to the multiple small short local matches, are going to be looking as more closer suspect or more possible suspect. Okay, and I'm going to round them up to have a list of possible suspects that I'm trying to do. Okay, however, I will do that one at a time. That means the query will be matched to those hundreds and thousands and lakhs of sequences, but each time the match will be one to one. That is called as pairwise, when you take two sequences at a time. So one at a time, one match between a query and a reference will be made, which is called as pairwise. It will be done, and in this manner I will come up with the possible suspects. Here suspect will basically be a similar sequence. Okay, similar sequence. Now very important, you are all students of biology and you have had courses in molecular biology and a little bit about molecular aspects of gene also. You must have heard, DNA, RNA and proteins, they have certain regions in them which are quite unique. Okay, when it is DNA, RNA, there are some regions which are repetitive. Okay, and there are some regions which are very conserved, especially in case of proteins. So you have repetitive and conserved regions in DNA, RNA, protein, and they have their own functions. Okay, I'm not going to go into what they are doing and why they are there. That is another chapter altogether. But that we know that repetitive and conserved nature is there in these molecules, namely DNA, RNA, protein. And here we are going to exploit this repetitive and conserved nature for creating these short local alignments. Whenever I use a query and I try to match it with a subject, I am actually using these repetitive and conserved regions over a DNA or a RNA or a protein sequence as those clues or informations, like wearing a hat, wearing a boot, wearing a overcoat, or limping, or some other feature which was there in the murder story. I'm going to use them Because in a given DNA sequence, you have just 4 bases, A, T, G, or C. In case of RNA, it is A, U, G, and C. In case of protein, there are 20 amino acids. So you can imagine that if I take any DNA, RNA, or protein sequence, there is these bases or amino acids present. So at many times, it may not mean anything for a program like BLAST. So what I need is something unique in them, something which has a clue, something which is different, something which has a pattern, something which is different, something which has a pattern, something which is doing something. That is why it is very much conserved. These things are going to be exploited for creating these short local alignments. And because of these short local alignments, I am going to round up certain suspects. Although I don't say them suspects, I call them reference sequences, subject sequences, close relatives, many names. एक ही मतलब है, नाम बहुत सारे हैं, subjects and relatives and references and whatnot. But now there's a big question. If anybody has done BLAST, there is a small thing, a small problem here. But that means there may be false positive too. There will be some false positive. You know, suppose in that murder story, if there's a man walking nearby, an old man of 80 years of age, walking by and wearing a long overcoat and is exactly 6 feet tall, and because of the winter he is wearing a hat, in that case that poor 90-year-old person might be considered a suspect by the investigating officer, and he might be rounded up also. You know, at least he might be called to police station and he might be asked to give his credentials, and he might be asked to tell you why he was roaming around. If he's 90 years old, why he was roaming around early in the morning during winter, and that too why he was there. You know, and these things happen. And you know, we all know a 90-year-old man, you know, doing that crime is almost like, you know, 1 in a million chance. So the problem is here also in BLAST that it means that there may be false positive too, as local alignments are less sensitive. Why they are less sensitive? Because they only work on certain regions which are either repetitive or have a pattern or are conserved or belong to a motif or are domain specific and so on and so forth. But sometimes it may happen that you round up a wrong sequence as a possible suspect. How do we deal with that? Okay, it's an interesting thing, and we do deal with that. I'll tell you how do we deal with that. Okay, in another half an hour or so, I'll tell you how do we deal with that. But that is a thing that yes, you sometimes end up with a false positive. Okay, but that is how life is. Moving on, we have some salient features of BLAST. Okay, so what exactly BLAST is doing? Okay, so there are 4 things that we all should know. First of all, it's a very popular program. Okay, there are thousands of memes in internet also. You know, there's a joke going on in the molecular biology world that, you know, my PhD boss asked me to do something because I was not doing something, so I blasted the sequences. Okay, so it's a joke. But that basically means that it is such a popular thing that whosoever is doing molecular biology, whosoever is into sequencing work, DNA, RNA, or protein work, they simply do one thing, and that is BLAST. They basically do BLAST. Okay, sometimes they are doing BLAST for a couple of weeks altogether. Anyways, so it's a very popular program for comparing and searching similar sequences, which I call homologous sequences or similar matches and so on. And we use biological databases where you have DNA, RNA sequences, protein sequences, and for doing that, the algorithms that are applied are basically sequence alignments. Okay, usually if it is local alignment, we are using Needleman and Wunsch, and if it is the global one, we are using the other one. Okay, it was developed by Stephen Altschul, Samuel Carlin, Eugene Myers, Warren Gish, David J. Lipman, and Webb Miller, and they published their findings in Journal of Molecular Biology in the year 1990, and then major publications came out in 1994, 1997. Okay, and this work was basically done and funded by National Institute of Health. Now you know NCBI has very strong tie-up with National Institute of Health (NIH) and National Library of Medicine (NLM). Okay, and that is one of the reasons why NCBI has been controlling BLAST since then, and they are the major proprietors of BLAST. Okay, one thing I want to tell you here that, you know, bioinformatics and for that matter, databases, for that matter, tools and softwares, programs, they're extremely dynamic. Okay, they change every day. They're updated every day. Every day some new thing comes up. So while I'm teaching you this, it may happen that something new comes up which I am not aware of. So these things are very dynamic. They change every day. So we try to impart the basic idea behind what is happening, but every day new versions, new features come up. So BLAST, it's a sequence identification and annotation tool through homology searches. Homology means similarity, similarity in appearance, similarity in morphology, similarity in journal structure, and here it means similarity in the sequences. Okay, and the tool is available with National Center for Biotechnological Information Database at ncbi.nlm.nis.gov, and you must have heard about this particular database as a very important database and one of the earliest databases which were actually very extensive, very comprehensive, and very useful also. Okay, the final salient feature right now we are going to discuss is it works on the concept of local alignment. It works on the concept of local alignment. That is, BLAST tries to find patches of regional similarity. Same thing. Repetitive regions, conserved regions, small information, small stretch, and that is the regional similarity. Rather than trying to find the best alignment between the entire query and the entire relative sequence or reference sequence. So we are not interested in having a global alignment. I hope you must be remembering global alignment. Global alignment is through and through over the entire length. We are not interested in that. We are interested in small patches having a particular pattern or repetitiveness or conservedness or some uniqueness in them, which is enough for me to find the best alignment between a given query and a given subject. I am not interested in the entire alignment from start to stop. I am not interested. And in this manner, multiple local alignments between query and subject are generated rather than one single alignment. So BLAST means that you are going to work, or you means here this program, the program will be working to just find interesting patches which are having similarity. Those patches which are different, dissimilar, not so similar, or having too much of different information because of which there are gaps being generated, they will simply ignore it. They will not be used in homology searches. It's a very simple thing. If you want to go for homology, you have to ignore what is not similar, because you are going to look for similarities. So when you are going to look for similarities, completely ignore those parts or those areas where you don't find similarity, because that will simply deviate you, that will distract you, and that will basically that will basically end up you will lose, you will be lost in the entire exercise. So you don't want to get lost in the entire exercise, and therefore we want to basically focus on certain regions. Now moving on, just a second. Moving on, I told you BLAST is very dynamic. It changes every day. Okay. When I was in my master's degree, we were studying BLAST, and at the time there were some BLAST which are now not used. They are obsolete, and now new BLAST have come. So there are many types of BLAST, many different versions, many different methods, and many different programs. But I am trying to restrict myself, considering you as a UG student, to know what are the core BLAST types that we should know and we should learn, so that we know how BLAST is actually exploited when you have a given query of a particular type. So please focus on this slide. Okay, so you have a small diagram here. So BLAST can be worked with a protein sequence, which is basically amino acid sequences, or it can be used with DNA or RNA. Here we generally call it as DNA. It's basically meant for any kind of nucleic acid. So when you have amino acid sequence, you use either BLAST-P or you use T-BLAST-N. Okay, but when you have a DNA sequence, you have three options: BLAST-N, BLAST-X, and T-BLAST-X. Okay, so now let us just read what they are doing, and then I'll go into a pictorial diagram of what they're doing. BLAST-P compares a protein query against a protein database. So it's a protein-protein match. Okay, simple. BLAST-P is protein-protein match. You have a query which is protein, and you go into a protein database and you try to match based on local alignment. Then you have a T-BLAST-N, translated BLAST nucleotide. So here what happens is you have a protein query. So the query is a protein sequence, but you are not going into a protein database. You are going into a nucleotide sequence database or a DNA database. So protein is query, you are going into DNA database. How can you match? So you can match by translating the DNA database or the nucleic acid database into possible putative protein. Okay, so how do you do that? You all know, we all know, you know, DNA is the ultimate genetic material. It basically undergoes transcription to form mRNA, and the mRNA is basically translated to form protein. So there is a link, DNA to RNA to protein. So basically, if you have a DNA sequence, whether it is coding or not, please note, whether it is coding or not, we are not interested. What we are saying is, if you have a DNA sequence, you can simply translate it in 6 reading frames, okay, and come up with possible amino acid sequence they might be encoding. Now you will be thinking, sir, it may not be possible because there may be some DNA sequences which may have stop codons, which may be completely nonsense, which may have no ORF in them, which may not have any protein in them. Fine, no problem. You simply convert the entire DNA sequence database into 6 reading frames. Those 6 reading frames will be nothing but 6 possible amino acid sequences that are possible from that given DNA sequence, and then you will match the protein query with those possible 6 frames. Okay, now if you have a question in your mind, okay, what is the 6 reading frames are? Okay, what are these 6 reading frames? Okay, then I'll request you to please wait for some time when we start ORF. I'll tell you what these 6 frames are, but just to be very brief and very crisp about these 6 frames, I will tell you, DNA sequence, any given DNA sequence may have a gene or exon or an ORF. Okay, so when you take a DNA sequence and you give it to the computer does not know in which frame the gene is lying. So if you give a 10 base long DNA sequence to the computer will think how the codons are lying. Is it that the first base of the first strand is the first base of the codon also? So in what form, in what frame the codons are actually lying? Computer does not know. In fact, the user also don't know. Nobody knows. Okay, unless you actually do it. So you don't know it. So what you basically do is you hypothesize. Okay, first frame will be that frame where the first base of the sequence will also be the first base of the first codon. And that way you come up with a frame that is called as frame plus 1. Then you say, okay, fine. Let us ignore the first base and take the second base. If the second base is the first base of the first codon, then you will find a different frame. Okay, you can recall, mutations chapter, when you were taught mutations, there was a frame shift mutation, if you remember. So in frame shift mutation, if one of the base is deleted or if one of the bases is inserted in a DNA sequence, the frame changes. Whether it is deletion or insertion, the frame changes. Very much like that, in a given sequence, you will have frames. So one frame is when you consider the first base as the first base of the codon. If that is called as first frame. Second frame is when you consider the second base as the first base of the first codon, and then the third frame is when you consider the third base as the first base of the first codon. So that way, the first strand or one strand is considered to have possible 3 frames. And because we know DNA is double-stranded, and in a given long sequence, you might have some ORFs lying in one strand and some ORF lying in another strand. That is why 3 frames in one and 3 frames in the complementary strand, 3 plus 3, 6, and that is how you have 6 frames. Of course, for a given gene, for a given exon, for a given coding region, for a given ORF, only in one of those 6 frames you will have the right amino acid sequence. The remaining 5 will be technically nonsense for that particular ORF. This is basic concept. Okay, I will go back into this frame business when I'm into ORF finder. So till then, just wait. Then we come to BLAST-N. Now in BLAST-N, we compare the DNA query with a DNA sequence database. So it's a DNA homology search, just like BLAST-P. Then you have BLAST-X. It compares 6 frame conceptual translation, just like, you know, I told you 6 reading frames are there. Just like that, in BLAST-X, you will have the query which is DNA, but the query DNA will be converted, will be translated into possible conceptual 6 frames. And then those 6 frames, which are now amino acid sequences, they will be matched against a protein database. So it's a protein-protein match, but technically speaking, the query is DNA. So query is DNA, but the DNA query is converted to a 6 frame conceptual translation, and those 6 frames of amino acids, they are then matched to a protein database. That is BLAST-X. And then you have T-BLAST-X. Now T-BLAST-X is another level where you have the query DNA and subject is also DNA. It's a DNA comparison, but the actual match happens at the protein level. So it's very interesting. T-BLAST-X is query is DNA, subject is DNA, but we don't go for DNA match. What we go for is we convert the DNA query into a protein database, into a protein conceptual, 6 frame protein sequences, and we convert the nucleotide sequence database also into 6 frame possible amino acid sequences, then we match. So it's a DNA match, but done at the protein level. So it is very interesting. Okay, now you might be thinking, why do we do that? Okay, I can answer it, but I will answer it in the end. And I would actually request you to go home and think in what condition a researcher, a scientist, a person doing PhD or postdoc might be using all these. Okay, what is that situation in which when somebody falls, that they actually don't go for simple BLAST-P or BLAST-N, rather they go into T-BLAST-N, BLAST-X, T-BLAST-X. Why do we do that? Okay, it can be your homework for tonight to think about why you actually need it. Okay, anyways, I'm moving on. So whatever I told you just now about types of basic BLAST, this picture depicts the same thing. So it's a small revision of the previous slide. You have a DNA query. So here you have the query. You have a DNA query, and here you have the references, which we call as database here. So if the query is DNA, nucleic acid, when you do a DNA to DNA direct match, it is BLAST-N. Nucleic acid to nucleic acid direct match. But when you don't do that and you simply convert the nucleic acid into conceptual possible protein sequences, and then you match that with possible conceptual protein sequences, then that is called as T-BLAST-X, the last one of the previous slide, T-BLAST-X, right? So T-BLAST-X is protein-protein match, while the query and subject were DNA. It's interesting. Then you have BLAST-X, where the query is converted to protein sequence, and then it is matched with protein databases. Okay. Then you have another interesting case where you have query protein. Okay, the query is protein sequence. The protein sequence is matched with the conceptual 6 frame protein translations of DNA database. Then it is T-BLAST-N. And when you do a simple protein-protein match, it is BLAST-P. So simple protein-protein match will be basically BLAST-P. So this is basically a summary of in how many different ways you can treat a query and try to find out what it is. Number one, to whom it belongs to, what are the possible conserved regions, how much it is closer to whom, what is the percentage identity, and what is the statistical probability that it is actually this. So in a way, you try to know my query is what and belongs to whom, what is the percentage, what is the identity like, and how it is, what possible role it might be doing in the organism or in the molecular ecosystem from where it is coming up, what it might be doing there. Okay. I told you just now, BLAST is very dynamic. When I was in master's degree, when I was doing PhD, some of these BLAST were not even there. So, by the time I was done with my PhD, at that time a BLAST came. It was called as mole BLAST. Okay, so I did my PhD on basically environmental sequences, what you call as metagenomics. So basically, in the fag end of my PhD work, this mole BLAST came. And at that time, Smart BLAST, Primer BLAST, Global Aligned, CDSET was there, Egg BLAST, Vaxstream, CDART, multiple alignment. These specialized BLAST searches were not there. My point is, it's very dynamic. Every day you have new versions coming up, and it makes it more interesting, more efficient, more accurate, and more user friendly to basically expand what you can do, and with more greater convenience and more ease, you can actually bypass very complicated wet lab procedures. You can bypass several tedious processes, and you can simply come up with the possible answers that you're looking for. Okay, so something like Primer BLAST. Okay, there was a time when if you want to design a primer, it will take you sometimes weeks and sometimes even months to basically come up with a good primer. But now with Primer BLAST, you can actually come up with a primer in a matter of minutes, maximum a day. Okay, so these are special types of BLAST which are there on the BLAST homepage. I'll talk about them later. Okay, moving on. So we are coming to our main idea behind this particular session with you. How to perform a basic BLAST. Okay, how do you do the BLAST? Such as BLAST-N and BLAST-P. So right now I'm going to focus on BLAST-N and BLAST-P because they are the most basic type of BLAST and the most commonly used also. Actually, in majority of the cases, you will end up using either BLAST-N or BLAST-P with or without MegaBLAST, but that will be the one which will be the most commonly used one. So what exactly do you need? You don't need much things. You just need a PC or a laptop. You don't need very high capacity gaming laptops. You just simply need a simple laptop with Windows, any Windows, and any processor which has minimum 4 GB RAM, so that you have capacity to basically work with more than 40 sequences. So a basic simple PC and laptop you need, and definitely you need internet connectivity because it is basically run online. Okay, you can do offline also, but that's some other day I'll tell you. Moving on. Data wise, you need a DNA or a protein sequence, which I call as query, which we all call as query, and you need that as text file. You can get it downloaded from the sequence database also. I hope in the previous sessions somebody might have told you how to download, how to retrieve sequences, how to get sequences in different formats. There are many formats. The most common one is the FASTA format. Most common one is the FASTA format. So what exactly is the FASTA format? Any sequence when is given a unique 8 or long character code, and before that character code you have put a greater than sign. So please see this. If you have a greater than sign followed by no space and a unique code, it can be the organism name, it can be the family, it can be the name of the gene, it can have underscores, it can have some numerals, it can have alphabets, but there should not be a space. So a sign of greater than, then a unique character of minimum 8 digit, okay, or more than that. After that, put a enter, and then you have the sequence. The sequence should not have enter command or space command between them. That is FASTA format. Okay, you will be using the FASTA format in most cases. So whether you are working with BLAST or any tool or a phylogenetic tool, you will need FASTA format very commonly. So this is basically a FASTA format picture. I have made this file in TextPad. So it's a very basic file. Try not to make your FASTA in Microsoft Word. In Microsoft Word, what happens, there are ghost commands which are there in the file which will not let you work. So you have to basically be very sure about this, that you are working in a notepad or a rich text format or a text pad. So your file should be without any hidden enter or tab or spaces. Okay, that is important. So you need a query, or otherwise you don't have a query, you can use any accession number of any sequence, protein or DNA, which you want to use as query. Okay, that will also do. This is all that you need. Moving on, the first step will be to basically visit NCBI website. Now, it's I think good number of days of this workshop. You must have all seen the NCBI website at www.ncbi.nlm.nih.gov. Okay, so you go to the website and you go to the resource list. Okay, there are n number of ways to go to BLAST. Okay, directly you can click here. If I hope you can see the laser pointer, you can directly go to BLAST. Okay, here. Or if you want to basically go through more standard procedure, you have to click resource list. So because you probably are doing it for the first time, I am going through the standard procedure. So you have to click on the resource list A to Z. So all the resources, all the softwares will be basically here. So you click on that and you will see that here you have 1 A, B, C, D, likewise it is going on to Z. So I can see that. Now what I'll do is I'll click under B. Under B you will see basic local alignment search tool, BLAST is there. Apart from that, if you see here, you have BLAST standalone, you have BLAST microbial genomes, you have BLAST reference sequence gene, you have BLAST tutorials and guides. Okay, so out of these, you can imagine, you can actually, from your simple intuition, you can make out these are specialized searches when you want to basically target a particular group. Okay, when you want to target microbial genomes, you use BLAST microbial genomes. When you want to target reference sequences, which are standard sequences whose mRNA or cDNA or expression assay has been done, then you use reference gene. And when you are in doubt, when you want to know, how to do BLAST, what not to do, what actually a score means, then you have to go for BLAST tutorial and guides. Okay, so even after this workshop, if you are lost, if you want to know something, this is the place where you have to go to. Okay, you click this, you will know everything about BLAST. Okay, even more than anybody. So anyway, so you have to click on BLAST here, and then you will basically be taken to the BLAST homepage. Okay, this is the BLAST homepage, and this homepage is in two. It's a long page, so I have made two pictures out of this. The upper part is like this, and the lower part is like this. Okay, so this is the lower part where you have the specialized searches of the BLAST, and this is the upper part where you have the basic, most commonly used BLAST. And as you can see, you have nucleotide BLAST, and you have protein BLAST, and you have BLASTX, T-BLASTN, and likewise you have other BLASTs. Okay, you can do a specific BLAST into a genome. So you can go for human or mouse or rat or microbe or E. coli or Arabidopsis or any model organism which has been completely sequenced. You can actually do BLAST within a genome also now. Okay, so this is BLAST N, this is BLAST P, this is BLAST X, this is T-BLAST N, likewise. Okay, so this is the BLAST homepage where you have to come. Now from there, I will now start with BLAST N first. So we'll do BLAST N now. So what I did, I actually clicked the BLAST N. So I clicked to open the nucleotide BLAST. Okay, so this is the BLAST N page, and here you can see on the top right left corner you have BLAST N, BLAST P, BLAST X, T-BLAST N, T-BLAST X. All 5 types of possible BLAST that you can do. Okay, you might still be wondering when and why and in what condition do we use them. I'll tell you eventually. Okay, but as of now, let's talk about BLAST N. So you have this page. On this page, you can enter the accession number or GenBank information number or FASTA sequences. Okay, for brevity and convenience, we go for FASTA sequences. You have to simply copy paste your sequences here. Okay, how many sequences you can copy? You can copy as much as 300, 400, 1000, even more than 1000 sequences. The only thing is when you go beyond 40, it will take a lot of time to basically finish the result. So normally we say in one go, don't go beyond 40 sequences, but for the current workshop, for you, we will go just one sequence. So you will put your FASTA sequence. Remember FASTA sequence? I told you a sign of greater than followed by a character of 8 long characters of numerical or alphabetical characters or an underscore or a special character, and then followed by the entire sequence. The character and the sequence should have an enter in between. Okay, there should be an enter in between the character, the 8 characters and the actual sequence. Okay, and you will paste it here. Okay, you can also, if you have a text file made, you can actually upload the file also, and if you want, you can give a job title. You know, if your name is Ram, then Ram search. If your name is if you're working with Arabidopsis, then okay, Arabidopsis blast. So you can give your own choice as the job title. Okay, it's completely up to you. Okay, query subrange. When you want to not go, or when you want to basically delimit or restrict your search to a particular coordinate. So suppose you have a single sequence, the sequence is 10,000 base long, but you want to do blast only for 500 base to 6,000 base. You can actually write there, here, from 500 to 1,000 or 6,000. So only in that range, the blast will be done. The remaining sequence will be neglected, will be ignored. Okay. Then very important, it says choose search set. So here it is saying which database you want to target. You have standard database, which is called as NR. NR means non-redundant nucleotide collection. NRNT बोलते हैं इसको. So you have standard database, you have rRNA or ITS sequences database, internal transcript spacer sequences, or genomic or transcript databases, or beta coronavirus sequences. So these are specific databases, out of which the first one, which is called as standard database, is a general collection of all nucleotide sequences submitted till date, which are unique and have something different in them, and that is why the name non-redundant. That means two sequences which are exactly same, not having anything, not having a single base common in them will be there, but if there are two sequences exactly same, only out of those two, only one will be there. That is why the name non-redundant database. So for convenience and to learn, we first we always, in a normal world, we always go into this particular database called as nucleotide collection or NRNT database. Okay, eventually when you start working with it, you can actually go into different specialized targeted databases, but to begin with, NRNT is the best one. Similarly, you have organism, it is written optional, exclude optional, limit to optional, on-track query optional. That means if you want to create some more filters, you can choose that. For example, if I go into organism, I might say, okay, only rat, only human, only Arabidopsis, only E. coli, only coronavirus, likewise. Okay, so you can give your options. And finally, after you have done with these filters, you have to simply hit submit. So you have to basically click this button called as blast. Now, I will take 1 minute to tell you something. Okay, so here you have selection optimized for highly similar sequences, megablast, more dissimilar sequences, discontiguous megablast, and somewhat similar sequences, blast 10. Okay, so basically, not to worry, megablast is a very refined heuristic version of blast 10, where the megablast basically is more useful when you are working with multiple sequences. When you are working with multiple sequences, something like 40-50 sequences, and you want your results coming up with high accuracy and in minimum time, the version that you are actually looking for is megablast, which will give you highly similar sequences from divergent taxa. You are putting in a query of a rat sequence and it might come up with the bacterial sequences as the most similar. So when you want to actually hit a divergent range of taxa, trying to find out which sequence is the most similar, probability wise, statistically, and in all senses, and you are trying to basically apply an algorithm which is so greedy that it tries to maximize the gap penalty so that the results are highly close to what the reality is. you go for megablast. In general, we say when you have many sequences, go for megablast. When you have just one sequence, go for blast time. Okay. Sometimes you want to know, if you remember orthologs and paralogs. So if sometimes you want to know the orthologs. Okay. So when you want to know the orthologs, you go for more dissimilar sequences. That is called as discontiguous megablast. Okay. So what will happen is, in this case, those who are more dissimilar, that means more different, they will come up. Okay. But in a normal scenario for this workshop, we'll go into either blast 10 or megablast. Okay. So, and then once it is done, you will simply hit blast. You'll hit the blast and it will show you a picture. It will show you a page where it will say that the page will be automatically updated in seconds until the search is done. So this is basically a relaxing step. You don't have to do anything, just wait for some time. Depending upon your internet speed, depending upon how many sequences you have given, depending upon what is the length of your query, I mean how many bases are there, depending upon how divergent or how common that sequence is, depending on all those things, it will take 10 seconds to something like 5 minutes. Okay, depending on all those things, and it will take some time, and it will give you a page, a result, which will be something like that. Okay. So in this page, there are so many things, but one thing which is outrightly clear is a table. You're seeing a table here. Now this table is called as hit table. Okay, hit list. You remember that murder story? In that murder story, I told you the investigating officer wants to round up the suspects. Okay, whether I am able to catch the criminal or not, I just want to round up suspects. Please remember, these are suspects. These are suspects. Never say that this is this. Okay. In bioinformatics, in stats, it's all probability and high accuracy. Most probable answers that we try to answer, that we try to say. We don't say this is this. Okay. We can't say until it is proven it is this. So these are called as possible hits. In fact, the table is called as hit table. HIT, hit. Okay, so these are the possible hits that I have got from the sequence databases, which are matching most similarly to my query. Now the topmost sequence is the most similar. The second one is slightly less, then slightly less, then slightly less, and this will go on and on and on. It might have 200 sequences, it might have 300 sequences. In this particular case, you can see it is showing 100 sequences. So you have 100 sequences which are producing significantly important, significantly, high score alignments, which are making my query now belonging to a particular group or a particular gene or a particular family or a particular functional category. Okay, so in this page, don't get confused. Very simple. Which program you followed? Okay, this is an auto-generated RID. Okay, which database you used? It's a system-generated query ID. Okay, this is the name of the FASTA file I gave. The molecule was DNA. The length of the DNA was 1440. Query. Okay, I can also see a first-hand neighbor joining tree. Okay, yesterday you also had a phylogenetic tree making session, I think so. So if you want to actually see a first-hand tree of your query with these possible suspects, if you want to see, you don't have to go into Mega right now. Okay, Mega is another level altogether. But if you want to see how your query fits and sits in and among these references, okay, you can simply click here and you will get a tree where your query will be shown in a tree with all the references, relatives, who references, which references, these suspects, how they fit, how they match. Okay, now this is like when I hit description, I get this. If I will hit graphic summary, I will get something like this. Just wait. I will get something like this. Okay, I'll tell you about what this is, but if I hit graphic summary, I'll get this much, this one. Then similarly, if I hit on alignments, one-to-one alignment, query with subject, query with subject, query with subject, one-to-one alignment with all these 100 sequences will be shown. If I click taxonomy, I will be told taxonomically to which particular class, order, family, genus, species, subspecies, race, strain, I mean wherever it is applicable, it will show to this particular class it belongs to. So you can imagine with one query sequence in a matter of seconds, now you know to who it belongs, what it does, okay, what is the score, how good the alignment is, and what is it taxonomically. And 10 seconds ago, you had no idea. You had no idea as to what is this. All you had is ATGC, ATGC, GCGC, ATGC. But now you know gene, now you know possible function, now you know to which particular cell or nucleus or plastid genome it belongs to. Now you know to which family or class it belongs to. It is plant or animal or bacteria or virus or I don't know what. And then what is the kind of alignment? And it is not even, I mean, not just this much. Now you have more information. Now you have the possible scientific name also here. You have maximum score, total score, query cover, e-value, percentage identity, okay, length, and then accession number. These are the unique numbers with which these reference sequences have been submitted in the database. And these are like, your bank account number or Aadhaar number, your unique UID number. Just like that, these are unique numbers which are assigned to a particular sequence. And they are like from North Pole to South Pole. If you go to the website and you put on this number, you will get this particular sequence of ribulose 1,5-bis phosphate belonging to Diplotaxis hara. So these are unique IDs given by the database management to every sequence that is there in the database. And now you have these values. I will talk about these values. What are these? What do they mean? You remember I told you there is a chance of false positive. How do you remove false positive? On these numbers you remove false positive. You remember I told you in the murder story, it might be possible that an old man of 90 years of age is also walking by wearing a overcoat. Okay, police officer may suspect him also, may round him up also in police station. What will happen? So that old man will be saved because his numbers will speak that given his age, given his stage, given his condition, he might not be a good suspect. Okay, his probability is extremely low and he will be basically down the line in the hit list, and he will not be the top 10 or top 5 or top 20 suspects. So these numbers actually rule out the false positive. If you remember, I told you way back here, if you remember, false positive. These false positives are taken care of because of these values. So when you do a blast, don't jump to conclusion unless you see the numbers. So these numbers speak for themselves, and these numbers tell you that whether it is a good idea to basically keep them or not. And I'll come to them. Let me just finish blast P, then I'll come to what these numbers mean. Okay. So in this manner, blast is completed. You have the hit table with you, you have the numbers, you have all these descriptions, graphic summary, and you have the option to basically view the tree. You can also view the multiple sequence alignment of your sequence with all other sequences. You can filter your, results. I mean, if you want to only see, okay, how many sequences belong to Arabidopsis, I can actually write here. Okay, I can filter. Okay, tell me only those sequences which are between 60 to 70% identity. Okay, tell me only those sequences which are having an e-value of, let's say, 0 to 1. Okay, and so on and so forth. So these are basically for you to play and for you to basically fine tune your results. But in general, this is the result. This is what you get in a blast run. We now move on to blast P. So for blast P, go back to the blast homepage. You have now gone into nuclear blast N. Now we are going into blast P. Okay, just a second. So now you are going into blast P. In blast P, you will get this particular page, very similar to that one. Okay, and you will click here blast P. Okay, of course, if you have hit blast P here, your tab will be already green for blast P, no problem. But otherwise, you can swap between blast and blast P from the blast homepage only. So you have to paste your sequence, which sequence it should be. If you are doing BLAST P, remember query has to be protein, the subject has to be protein. So you're doing BLAST P, you have to paste your sequence in FASTA format, and that sequence should be an amino acid sequence. In this case, I have taken a sequence from a sequence of Arabidopsis pitrea. Okay, it belongs to ribulose 1,5-bisphosphate carboxylase oxygenase gene. I have taken this and I copy pasted the FASTA format, for example, in the presentation. Just like that, if you want to delimit or restrict your query, you can put numbers here. You can choose a text file if you have it. You can give a job title. Okay, you can select a database. You can select a particular organism that you want to look into, and then you have all these blasts. You have a quick BLAST P, you have a BLAST P, then you have a PSI blast, you have a PHI blast, you have a delta blast. All these are rather except BLAST P, all these others are very specialized and targeted. Okay, they are specialized for doing a particular function, for doing a particular kind of blast, and they are targeted. Okay, they look for a particular region or a conserved domain only. But for this particular work, we're going to do only BLAST P. So I'm going into protein blast, and once I've clicked this, I'll simply click blast and I'll wait for the result. After several minutes, you will get a similar output just like you got in the case of BLAST10. Everything is same. The only thing different will be here. The molecule type will be amino acid. The length will be accordingly. The program will be BLAST P. Same database. Query ID, RID are made by the system only. You will see the links for distance tree of result. You will have a multiple alignment. You have MSA viewer, and then you have description, graphic summary, alignments, and taxonomy. You again have a hit table here. You again have scientific names. You again have same maximum score, total score, query coverage, E value, and so on and so forth. So you have exactly same values, exactly same numbers, accessions that you are actually having. Now let us talk about what these actually mean and how do you interpret them. So when you click on graphic summary, if you remember, this particular button, graphic summary. If you click graphic summary, you will see something like this. Okay, where you have a this bar showing different colors. So black means the score less than 40, blue means score between 40 to 50, green means score between 50 to 80, pink is 80 to 200, and red means more than 200. Okay, it's a color key. Then you have a line, a bar, which is red. So from 0 to the entire length, it is given a particular color. Okay, the query is this. The query is from this to this. Okay, now with reference to this particular query, each one sequence, every sequence in this entire result, okay, is hyperlinked to the sequence. So please take note, the first line, the first red line is actually this sequence. The second sequence is this line, and so on and on and on and on. And this is basically, what is this? This is hit list. This is hit table. Now in this hit table, the topmost is the one having highest score. Then lesser, then lesser, then lesser, and so on, so on, so on. You will see the score is falling. Fine. Now we know, okay, fine. Graphically, you have around 10 to 15 sequences which are having a very good score. Then you have sequences which have at one portion red, other portion green. That means initially the score is very bad. Eventually the alignment is very strong. That means you may have some repetitive conserved region which is here. That is why the alignment is good, but here the alignment is very bad. In next case, you have a black line. That means the alignment is further bad. It's worst. And in this manner, you will see that you have these alignments going down and low. Sometimes you will see a gray line. A gray line means no alignment, and therefore zero score. In fact, the score might actually went negative because of the gap penalty. So if you have no score, no alignment, gap penalty ki wajah se negative ho gaya, then you will say gray lines. So if you have a gray line, that means the match is there, but it is a very poor suspect, poor relative. Okay, so in your murder story, you know, that poor man might be somewhere here, because that man being a possible suspect is very low. So you have to focus on the top 10 or top 5 sequences, because they are the ones which are the most similar or the most possible sequences with which you are dealing as query sequence also. Okay, so your query is actually matching to these sequences, and it is possible that your query is actually this sequence. But again, it is not always 100% there. We always say very likely, highly probable that this is this. Okay, so as I said, red bars will mean most similar sequence, pink bar less good, green bars not impressive match, blue bar worst score, black bar bad hit, gray line no score, score went negative. Okay, so for a negative score we don't have a color, so we don't show it as a line, we just show it as a gray, you know, line. Okay, then we you remember this particular output that you got in BLAST and BLASTP both. So in BLAST and BLASTP both, you got this particular result. Okay, now let us see what these actually mean. So the first box of description, it has, you know, a name. It is basically the name of the gene. So ribulose 1,5 bisphosphate carboxylase oxygenase large subunit, and coming from Diplotaxis hera, this name is there. So what actually it says? It means putative identity. Description means putative identity of the query sequence. So your query is possibly this. Okay, where the topmost sequence is the best match. So topmost suspect is the best suspect in this hit table, where your query, which until now had no name, had no idea what it is now this. So now I can say my query is possibly a ribulose 1,5 bisphosphate carboxylase oxygenase large subunit gene. Fine. Then you have the other box that is called as scientific name. Here you have scientific name. It's very obvious that, you know, this is basically these are the organisms. These are the organisms from where these sequences have been reported. So if this sequence is matching to my query, it means that most probably my query also belongs to the same organism, or it belongs to an organism which is taxonomically or phylogenetically very close to this particular organism. Suppose if you had mango here, because mango everybody knows, mango here, then it means my query is also of mango, or if not, it is coming from another plant which is belonging to mango family, Anacardiaceae. You got the point? So if you had scientific name here as rat, so if this sequence is of rat, that means either my query is of rat or it is of another, you know, organism which belongs to rodent family. Okay, so what I'm trying to tell you, that this particular gene is coming from this organism, means that your query is also from this organism or a very closely related organism. Okay, again, nothing is 100% sure. These are all likely probabilities, statistical significances that we want to discuss. Then you have something called as total score and max score. So you have max score is like how much it can actually go and how much you got. So score is basically also known as bit score or simply bit. It is a value calculated from the number of gaps. So how much gaps you actually got during alignment process. So when local alignment was actually happening, how many gaps were there within those short alignments also. So within this short alignment, how many gaps were there, how many substitutions you had to do for the alignment. Okay, because it was going on in a dynamic programming algorithm, how many gaps and substitutions you had to actually incorporate. Higher the score, okay, the more significant the alignment. So if the score is very high, it is very likely, or it is very high probability that the alignment is very significant. Each score links to the corresponding pairwise alignment. Actually, if you click on these values, you will be taken to the pairwise alignment of this query with that particular subject. Okay, then you have E value, very important, E value. Okay, E value is the expect value which describes the likelihood that a sequence with a similar score will occur in the database by chance. Okay, so it's a probability. It's a value which describes the chances that this sequence, your query, with a similar score. That means e-value tells you what are the chances that you will find another sequence which is not there in this hit table having a similar score as right now you are having with this particular sequence of diplotaxis, okay, by chance. That means if the e-value is very high, okay, that means it is by chance showing as this gene and belonging to that organism, and the results are not true. If the e-value is close to 0 or it is highly negative, that means the chances are very less and the results are very good. Okay, if you are confused, I'm saying it again. E-value is the likelihood or the chance that this sequence, okay, with this score will again occur in database with some other sequence. That means this result is not so important. That is e-value. So if you have e-value of 0, if you have e-value of 0.0, that means there is no chance that you will have this score with any other sequence. That means 100% this is this. But if you get a e-value which is not 0, but it is 1e minus 132, it means 1 into 10 to the power minus 132. That means it is highly negative, okay, but you cannot be fully sure. In fact, you are not even sure when it is 0 also. But 1e to the power minus 132 is still a very good score. So remember, as much it is closer to 0, the better it is. And as much it is far away from 0, more and more negative, it means that the alignment is not so good, the match is not so good, and you are not very much sure, and we can't be confirmed as to the query belongs to this particular organism. So it's all probability and statistics that you have to apply. But that said, if you ask me what is more important than e-value, I would say percentage identity. Percentage identity means the total percentage of residues which were matching with the query into 100, that will give you percentage identity. If you have percentage identity more than 80%, you are automatically at a very high significance that you have the query matching to so and so reference sequence, and it's a high probability that your query does the same thing, is the same gene, does the same function, and belongs to the similar organism or same organism or an organism of the same family. So as long as you are having a percentage identity of more than 80%, you are safe. But remember, if you're working with bacteria, you're working with viruses, you're working with human system, you're working with some other systems, this identity cutoff is different. For example, in case of viruses, we say unless we have 97% similarity, we cannot actually make a conclusion. Because as you know, viruses, they change very fast, Corona being the top one. So they are changing very fast. So unless you have more than 90 to 95% similarity, we can't be sure of whether this is the same thing or not. But in the case of plants and animals, if you have a score more than 80%, you are safe. Okay, so these are the small things that you need to know to basically interpret your data and to be to be confident as to whether your query is actually what you are thinking or not. So if you have a very bad e-value, or if you have a very bad percentage identity, or if you have the score very low, okay, if the query cover, that means how much of the query was covered during analysis. If it is low, less than 80%, that means your results are not very confident and the results are not very clean. But in a way, it is a very good news, because if you have very bad values here, okay, if you have very bad values here, it is a good news, because that means you have hit upon a new sequence. And there are chances that, you are working with something very new, which has not been reported. So, usually people say negative data is not a good idea, not a good thing, but actually it's a very good thing. But because if you are working with some, organism, or if you got some gene which is real, and if you are getting a sequence which is real, and it is having a very bad score, very bad query cover, very bad e-value, very bad identity, in a way you should party, because you have hit upon a new sequence which has not been reported. So, you know, it's a win-win situation in that way. Okay, so now we go into the applications of BLAST. So where do we apply the BLAST? So we apply the BLAST in these 4 or 5 regions, namely identifying species. As I told you, you can actually, you know, you can actually go down to family or genus or, order, or sometimes even close to species rank, depending upon, you know, the quality and the length of the sequence and the availability of the reference sequences. See, in a BLAST program, the strength lies in the reference sequence. Okay, if the reference sequence is rich, you will get the identity. If the reference sequence is not rich, if the database is poor, then you can't really do anything about it. You have to wait for the results, or you have to wait for the reference sequence to be basically rich enough. But that thing said, identifying a species in a matter of minutes, if you have the sequence, is one of the most popular application of BLAST that people have been using. Okay, we all have been using this particular feature of BLAST, that in a minute you will know which bacteria, which virus, which plant, which animal it belongs to. At least we get to know whether it is a plant or an animal. Okay, so that is the idea. Similarly, depicting phylogeny. I told you BLAST is not the program for phylogeny. Okay, you don't do BLAST for phylogeny. Okay, but if you have a sequence and you want to have a quick, you know, rapid testing of the sequence as to what possible phylogeny it is having, with whom, and where does it fit, whether it is a novel sequence or a regular sequence, if you want to have a 1-minute review of that, BLAST is the answer. Okay. Similarly, if you want to compare genes, if you want to locate domains in case of proteins, or you want to go for DNA mapping, where you want to know where exactly on the chromosome this particular gene is lying, you can actually go for targeted genome blasting, and you will know which gene is on which chromosome and where it actually is occurring, and what are the relevant sequences around it which can be used. So these are the applications of BLAST which are commonly and on a daily basis used. Okay. So this slide is a very interesting slide. I have, I have got this slide from a friend from who basically works a lot in bioinformatics, and this slide is only to tell you how life would be if BLAST was not there. So, you know, if you have to predict a protein function and you don't have the BLAST, then you have to conduct domain analysis or wet lab experiments. You have to go for wet lab experiments, you have to conduct domain analysis to predict a protein function. Okay, and that will take you, if you are not a regular worker, it will take you more than a year to finish that. But if you have the BLAST, what you have to do is use BLAST-P to blast your protein sequence against SwissProt. It's a very specialized protein database. If you get a good hit, more than 25% identity over the complete length of the protein, you have solved your problem, and you know that your protein has the same function as the SwissProt protein. SwissProt is a very specialized protein exclusive database which tells you the protein structure and protein function, what it does and where it does and what is the possible role. So if you have the BLAST, you can do that thing in a matter of a day, which would take you at least half a year or a year to do a domain analysis using wet lab experiments. Similarly, if you want to go for protein 3D structure prediction, if you don't have the BLAST, you have to do homology modeling, X-ray crystallography, or nuclear magnetic resonance. The names are so tedious that you kind of know, you know, it's not that easy to do a protein 3D structure. But because of BLAST, simply use BLAST-P to blast your protein against protein database, the database of protein structure. If you get a good hit, if you get a very good hit, more than 25% identity, you know that your protein and this good protein have a similar 3D structure. Okay, that means if the protein is matching with a reference sequence with more than 25% identity, there are chances, very good chances, that the protein that is there in the PDP, whatever 3D structure it has, 80% similarity will be there in that 3D structure of your query also. So query and reference will have nearly same 3D structure. You can do that in a matter of day, even if you are not a regular worker of bioinformatics. Similarly, finding protein family members. Okay, so if you don't have BLAST, you have to clone new family members, which means you have to look for orthologs and paralogs. You have to look for orthologs and paralogs. You have to basically screen plants and screen animals, screen bacteria, look for the protein, clone them, basically deploy recombinant DNA technology, clone them, and then you try to find out how many protein sequences or protein types are there within that particular family member, within that particular group. But with BLAST, you simply have to do BLAST-P, or its more powerful and robust version known as position specific iterated BLAST or PISCI-BLAST. Run it against the non-redundant protein family. After you have all the members of the family, you can make a multiple sequence alignment and draw a tree. That means you have to simply run your protein query against the NR protein database. You will get all those suspects or the hit table. You take all the reference sequences which are there in the hit table, and you do a MSA. You do an MSA and do a tree. You make a tree out of it, which is there in the tree viewer option of the BLAST, and you have the entire protein family that is there with all its diversity, with all its sequence diversity, with all its different domains and conservedness, that is there in a matter of few hours, which otherwise will take you, years to basically clone all family members using recombinant DNA technology. So this is basically an interesting insight into what BLAST can do, and thus save a lot of wet lab and tedious process. Okay, with that, BLAST is over. I'll take questions on BLAST in another 20 minutes. I'll finish off ORF Finder now. So the next session is on ORF Finder, and it basically is short for Open Reading Frame Finder. Okay, Open Reading Frame Finder, and the title that I have chosen here is basically locating putative open reading frames. Okay, putative means tentative, possible, probable. Nothing is for sure in bioinformatics. It is all possible, probable, likely. You got the idea. So locating putative ORFs